I recorded everything. Every lie, every laugh about how pathetic I was, every plan they made around my work schedule. 4 months of audio evidence that my wife thought I was too weak to leave her. She was about to find out how dead wrong she was. The key wouldn't turn. Amber jiggled it harder, twisting the metal until her knuckles went white. Nothing. She pulled it out, checked it was the right key, tried again. The lock didn't budge. What the hell? Her voice cracked like breaking glass as she fumbled for her phone's flashlight. The porch light was off. I always left it on for her. That's when she saw them. 3 cardboard boxes stacked neatly by the door, covered with a blue tarp. Her makeup bag was visible in the top box. Her favorite Louboutin heels poking out the side. No. No, 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 no. She dropped her purse, keys clattering across the concrete as she ripped the tarp away. Her clothes, her jewelry, her laptop, everything she owned, packed with surgical precision and left outside like garbage on collection day. She grabbed her phone with shaking fingers, calling my number, the sound of it going straight to voicemail. Not even my voice anymore, just the automated message, echoed in the empty night. Sean. Her scream cut through the suburban silence. I know you're in there. Open the door. The only response was the sound of her own breathing, getting shallow, more panicked. She pounded on the wood until her fists hurt, then pressed her face against the window, cupping her hands to peer inside. Empty. The expensive sectional sofa was gone. Our wedding photos were gone. It looked like no one had ever lived there at all. That's when she noticed the for rent sign stabbed into our front lawn. Her legs gave out. She collapsed onto the porch steps, designer dress riding up, mascara starting to streak as the reality hit her. I was gone. Actually gone. The man she'd called too weak to leave had not only left, he'd erased her from his life so completely, it was like she'd never existed. But let me back up 8 months and tell you how the weakest man she'd ever known became the one person she couldn't control. It was a Tuesday morning in March when I found the evidence that would destroy everything. I was getting ready for work, coffee brewing in the kitchen, when Amber's phone buzzed on the nightstand. She was in the shower, and normally I wouldn't look. But the preview lit up the screen, and what I saw made my blood turn to ice. Last night was incredible. Your husband still has no idea, does he? But here's what she didn't know. I'd already been recording her calls for weeks. See, I'm not actually stupid. I work in IT security. When your job is protecting people from digital threats, you learn to spot patterns. And Amber's patterns had been screaming at me for months. Late nights that didn't add up. Stories that changed in the telling. Phone calls she took in the other room. So I'd installed monitoring software on our shared phone plan. Legally, everything backed up to a secure server she knew nothing about. My hands were steady as I picked up her phone, steadier than they should have been. The message was from David M., a name I'd been seeing in her digital footprints for 3 months. I scrolled up through months of messages, already knowing what I'd find because I'd been watching it unfold in real time. Photos I won't describe, plans made around my work schedule, detailed conversations about where they'd meet, what they'd do, how they'd avoid getting caught. And then the words that had been haunting me since I first recorded them 3 weeks earlier. Honestly, I could probably tell Sean to his face and he wouldn't do anything about it. Really, he seems like a decent guy. Trust me, I've got him completely trained. He's too weak to leave me. I could cheat with half the city and he'd just sit there and take it. Poor guy thinks we're soulmates. Damn, that's cold. It's realistic. He needs me more than I need him. Always has. The shower shut off upstairs. I put her phone back exactly where it was, my heart hammering against my ribs but my mind crystal clear. When she came downstairs 20 minutes later, hair still damp, she kissed my cheek like she had every morning for 4 years. Working late tonight, babe, she said, grabbing her phone and checking those same messages right in front of me. Big client dinner. I nodded, pouring coffee into the travel mug she'd bought me for Christmas. Okay. I'll probably just grab something on the way home. She paused at the kitchen doorway, and for a split second, I thought she might say something else. Maybe even tell me the truth. Instead, she just smiled that same bright smile she'd been giving me while planning my humiliation. Love you, she said. Love you too. If you've ever been called too sensitive for having standards, hit subscribe. Your intuition isn't broken. Their respect is. The front door closed with a soft click, and I stood there in our kitchen, surrounded by the expensive appliances we'd bought together, the vacation brochures scattered on the counter, the calendar marked with anniversary dinners and couples retreats, feeling like a stranger in my own life. But I wasn't the same man she thought she was manipulating. Not anymore. I opened my laptop and reviewed the digital evidence I'd been collecting. Audio recordings of her phone calls with David. Screenshots of their messages automatically saved to my secure server. GPS data showing exactly where she'd been when she claimed to be working late. I had everything. And now I was going to use it. The thing about being systematically destroyed is that it happens so gradually, you don't notice until you're already gone. But the thing about being an IT security professional is that you never really stop looking for threats, even the ones that sleep in your bed. I spent that first day at work in a strange state of clarity, going through the motions of quarterly reports and client meetings, while my mind organized 4 years of relationship data I'd been too blind to analyze properly. Every compromise I'd made that wasn't actually a compromise. Every time she'd gotten her way because I was being understanding. Every instance where I'd apologized for things that weren't my fault. Looking in the mirror after my workout that evening, something I'd started doing religiously since discovering her affair, I realized I didn't recognize the man staring back. Not just physically, though 3 months of hitting the gym had already started changing my body. This person had boundaries, had standards, had stopped apologizing for existing. I'd become a ghost in my own life, and I hadn't even realized it was happening. That evening, I did something I hadn't done in years. I went straight to Cole's place after work without telling Amber where I was going. He opened the door with a beer in his hand, then took one look at my face. "What happened?" he asked, stepping aside to let me in. I told him everything, not just about the messages and the affair, but about the surveillance I'd been running, the months of digital evidence I'd collected, the systematic documentation of her betrayal. "Jesus Christ," he said finally, setting down his phone after I'd shown him some of the screenshots. "Sean, I'm sorry. I should have said something sooner." "You knew?" "Not about the cheating, but I knew she was wrong for you. The way she talked to you sometimes, like you were her employee instead of her boyfriend. The way she made decisions for both of you without asking what you wanted." He was right. When had I stopped having opinions about where we ate, what we watched, how we spent our weekends? When had I started measuring my worth by how happy I made her instead of how happy I was? "What are you going to do?" Cole asked. I took a long pull from the beer he'd handed me. "I'm going to let her think she's winning. Let her get comfortable. Let her think I'm exactly as weak as she told David I am. And then I'm going to show her what weak really looks like." Cole nodded slowly. "You know what I think? I think she's been counting on you being too nice to call her out, too afraid of losing her to demand better." He was right. I'd been so terrified of ending up alone that I'd accepted being disrespected, so focused on keeping the peace that I'd forgotten to ask if the peace was worth keeping. When I got home that night, Amber was already there, curled up on the expensive sectional sofa with a glass of wine and her laptop. She looked up when I walked in, and I saw something flicker across her face. Surprise, maybe even annoyance. "Where were you?" she asked. "I texted you like an hour ago." I pulled out my phone. Sure enough, there was a message I'd ignored. "Dinner plans fell through. Want to cook together tonight?" 6 months ago, I would have immediately apologized for missing her text, would have rushed to make it up to her. Tonight, I just shrugged. I was at Cole's. "Oh." She closed her laptop with more force than necessary. "Well, I already ate. There's leftover pasta in the fridge if you want it." "Thanks." I heated up the pasta and ate it standing at the kitchen counter while she watched TV in the living room. The pasta was that rich sauce she liked, the one that was too heavy for my taste, but that I'd never complained about. Tonight, I barely touched it. When I finished, I went upstairs, took a shower, and got into bed with a book on digital forensics I'd been meaning to read. When she came to bed an hour later, she curled up against my side like she always did. Usually, I'd put my arm around her, ask about her day, listen to whatever drama was happening at her office. Tonight, I kept reading. "How was Cole?" she asked, her voice carrying that subtle edge she got when she felt like she wasn't getting enough attention. "Fine. What did you guys talk about?" "Nothing much." She waited for me to elaborate. When I didn't, she tried a different approach. "Sean, are you okay? You seem distant." I looked up from my book. For a moment, I almost told her everything. The old patterns were so deeply ingrained that I could feel myself wanting to explain, to reassure, to make her feel better about whatever was bothering her. Instead, I just nodded. "I'm fine, just tired." "From what?" "Work. Life. Everything." She was quiet for a moment, clearly expecting more. "Do you want to talk about it?" "Not really." I went back to my book. She lay there for another 10 minutes, clearly waiting for me to put it down and give her my full attention like I always did. When I didn't, she rolled over with a frustrated sigh that I could hear echoing in the silence. "Fine. Whatever. Good night." "Good night?" As I listened to her breathing gradually slow into sleep, I realized something that should have terrified me, but instead felt like relief. I didn't miss the version of myself who would have spent the next hour analyzing this interaction, trying to figure out what I'd done wrong, how I could fix it. That version of me was already disappearing. And for the first time in years, I was curious to see who would take his place. Spring turned to summer, and I became a different person, so gradually that even I didn't notice at first. But Amber did. It started with small things. I stopped asking what she wanted for dinner and just made what I felt like eating. I started saying no to social events I didn't want to attend, even when she gave me that disappointed look that used to make me immediately change my mind. I bought a gym membership and started going 4 times a week without checking if it conflicted with her schedule. Most importantly, I stopped trying to manage her emotions. When she was in a bad mood, I didn't automatically assume it was my responsibility to fix it. When she hinted about wanting something, a new dress, a weekend trip, expensive jewelry, I didn't scramble to make it happen. When she told me about problems at work, I listened without offering solutions she hadn't asked for. I was still polite, still kind, but I was no longer performing the role of devoted boyfriend whose entire existence revolved around her happiness. And she noticed immediately. "You're different," she said one evening in late May. She was standing in the kitchen doorway watching me cook dinner for one. She'd texted earlier saying she was working late, which my surveillance software confirmed meant she was at the Marriott downtown with David. "Different how?" I asked, not looking up from the stir-fry I was making. My voice came out steady, almost eerily calm. "I don't know, distant, like you're not really here anymore." I glanced at her. She was wearing the dress I'd bought her for Valentine's Day, probably to impress her boyfriend. The irony wasn't lost on me, but it didn't sting anymore. It was just data. "I'm right here," I said simply, "but you're not talking to me. We used to talk about everything. We're talking now." She made a frustrated sound, the kind she used to make when I wasn't reading her mind correctly. "You know what I mean. Real conversation, about your day, your feelings, what's going on with us." I turned off the burner and faced her fully. "What would you like to know?" "I don't know. Anything. You come home, you eat, you read, you go to bed. It's like you're going through the motions." Maybe I am. The honesty in that statement seemed to catch her off guard. She opened her mouth, closed it, then tried again. "Why? What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. I'm just not the same person I was 6 months ago. People don't just change for no reason." "No," I agreed. "They don't." But I didn't explain further. I took my dinner to the table and ate while she stood there, clearly expecting more. The echo in our dining room seemed louder now. Or maybe I was just noticing it for the first time. When I finished, I rinsed my plate and went upstairs to work out in the spare room I'd converted into a home gym. By June, the changes were becoming obvious to everyone. I'd lost 20 pounds and gained muscle definition I hadn't had since college. My confidence at work had improved dramatically. Without the constant background noise of worrying about Amber's needs, I was more focused, more creative, more willing to take on challenging projects. People noticed. My colleague Derek commented on how much more energy I seemed to have. My boss offered me a promotion that would require more travel. something I would have automatically declined 6 months ago because Amber didn't like being alone. This time, I accepted without hesitation. At home, the dynamic shifted like tectonic plates. Amber started trying harder to get my attention, but her efforts felt increasingly desperate. She'd cook elaborate meals I didn't ask for, then get upset when I thanked her politely, but didn't gush about how amazing they were. She'd suggest activities we used to do together, weekend trips, couples dinners with friends, and seemed genuinely confused when I declined without offering alternative plans. "We never do anything together anymore," she complained one Saturday morning. I was getting ready to go hiking with Cole, something I'd started doing regularly. The sound of my hiking boots hitting the hardwood floor seemed to punctuate her frustration. "We had dinner together Wednesday," I pointed out. "That's not what I mean. We don't connect anymore. It feels like we're roommates, not a married couple." I considered this while lacing my boots. "Is that a problem?" "Of course it's a problem. We've been together for 4 years, married for 2. I stopped and looked at her, really looked at her. "Are we?" "What kind of question is that?" "An honest one." She stared at me like I'd spoken a foreign language. "Sean, what's going on with you? This isn't like you." "Maybe this is exactly like me. Maybe the person you fell in love with was just me trying to be what I thought you wanted. I fell in love with someone who cared about me, who wanted to spend time with me, who acted like being with me was the best part of his day. And now it feels like you're tolerating me." The accuracy of that statement hung in the air between us like smoke. 6 months ago, I would have immediately reassured her, would have spent the rest of the morning proving how much I loved her. Today, I just finished tying my boots. Real power isn't in the reaction, it's in the silence that follows. Subscribe if you're done explaining your worth to people who never valued it. I should go. Cole's waiting. I left her standing in the living room, probably for the first time in our relationship, without an explanation or reassurance about where we stood. When I got back that afternoon, she was gone. Her car wasn't in the driveway, and there was a note on the kitchen counter. "Staying at my sister's tonight. Need some space to think." I crumpled up the note and threw it away. Then I ordered pizza, opened a beer, and watched an entire baseball game without checking my phone once to see if she'd texted. For the first time in 4 years, I had a Saturday evening that was entirely my own. The silence in the house wasn't empty. It was peaceful. And it was perfect. July brought the summer heat and Amber's growing desperation in equal measure. She'd returned from her sister's after 3 days with a new strategy: sudden, overwhelming affection. She started leaving love notes in my work bag, texting me throughout the day with inside jokes and memories from our early relationship, suggesting romantic gestures we hadn't done in years. But I knew something she didn't. David was getting tired of the drama. My surveillance software had picked up their conversations, and the tone was shifting. He was asking why she seemed so needy lately, why she kept talking about me instead of focusing on their time together, why she was putting pressure on him to make decisions about their relationship. "I thought we could go to that little Italian place where we had our first date," she said one evening, already dressed in the black dress I used to tell her looked stunning. "You know, reconnect a little." I looked up from my laptop, where I was researching investment portfolios, something I'd never had money for when every spare dollar went toward making her happy. "I can't tonight. I have plans." Her face fell like a stone. "What plans?" "Derek and I are going to look at motorcycles." "Motorcycles?" She said it like I'd announced I was taking up lion taming. "Since when are you interested in motorcycles?" "Since now." "But we had plans." "No, you made plans. You didn't ask if I was available." She stood there for a moment, clearly recalculating. The old Sean would have immediately canceled with Derek, would have been thrilled that she wanted to spend time together. This Sean just closed his laptop and grabbed his keys. "We need to talk when you get back," she called after me, her voice cracking slightly. "Okay," I said, but I didn't promise when that would be. Derek and I spent the evening at a Harley dealership where I test drove a bike I had no business wanting, but found myself seriously considering. When Derek asked what had sparked my sudden interest in motorcycles, I told him the truth. I'm remembering what it feels like to want things for myself. When I got home around 11, Amber was waiting in the living room with a bottle of wine and 2 glasses. She'd changed into one of my old college t-shirts, the kind of casual intimacy that used to make me melt. "How were the motorcycles?" she asked, pouring wine I hadn't asked for. I could hear her breathing getting shallow, nervous. "Good, I'm thinking about buying one." "You're thinking about—" She set down the bottle harder than necessary. "Sean, we're supposed to be saving for our future, a bigger house, maybe kids someday. We can't just spend money on expensive toys." "We?" "Yes, we. We're a team, remember? We make decisions together." I accepted the wine glass but didn't drink from it. "When did we decide that?" "When we got married, when we vowed to build a life together." "And when did you decide that life together included David?" The words came out so calmly, so matter-of-factly, that it took her a moment to process what I'd said. When she did, the wine glass slipped from her hand and shattered on the hardwood floor, the sound echoing through our suddenly silent house. "What did you just say?" "You heard me." Her face went through several expressions: shock, panic, then something that looked like calculation. "Sean, I don't know what you think you know, but I know about the messages. I know about the hotels. I know about the jokes you make about how weak I am, how easy I am to fool." She was quiet for a long time, staring at the spilled wine spreading across the floor like blood. When she finally looked up, there were tears in her eyes, but I'd learned to tell the difference between genuine emotion and performance. "How long have you known?" 4 months. 4 months? Her voice cracked like breaking glass. "You've known for 4 months and you didn't say anything?" "What was I supposed to say?" "I don't know. Something. Anything. You were supposed to fight for us." I laughed, and the sound was harsh even to my own ears. "Fight for us? There is no us, Amber. There's you, and there's the person you thought you could control forever." "That's not true. I love you. You love what I gave you, the security, the devotion, the way I made everything in your life easier. You don't love me." She was crying harder now, mascara streaking down her cheeks. "Please, we can work through this. I'll end it with David. I'll do whatever you want." That's when my phone buzzed with a notification from my mom monitoring app. David was calling her. Right now, while she sat here begging for my forgiveness. I showed her the screen. Her face went white. "Answer it," I said. "Sean, no." "Answer it." With shaking hands, she picked up her phone. I could hear David's voice through the speaker, tinny and impatient. "Amber, thank God. Listen, I can't do this anymore. This whole situation with your boyfriend is getting too complicated. I think we should take a break." She looked at me in panic, then back at the phone. "David, wait, can we talk about this? Maybe we could meet?" "No, I'm done. Don't call me anymore." The line went dead. The silence that followed was deafening. She stared at her phone like it might come back to life, then looked at me with pure desperation. "Sean, please, I know how this looks, but I don't want anything from you anymore." "Don't say that. You're angry, and you have every right to be. But we can fix this. We can go to counseling. We can't fix something that was never real to begin with." August was when Amber's world completely collapsed. I was having dinner with Cole when my phone started buzzing with calls from her. The 4th call in 10 minutes. Cole raised an eyebrow. "You gonna answer that?" I looked at the screen showing her name and photo. A picture from last Christmas where she was smiling at the camera while I looked at her with obvious adoration. It felt like looking at strangers. "No." The calls stopped, but the texts started immediately. "Sean, please call me back. David won't answer his phone. I think he blocked me. I need to talk to you. Please don't ignore me." I showed the messages to Cole, who read them and shook his head. "Let me guess. Prince Charming figured out she's more trouble than she's worth?" He wasn't wrong. When I finally called her back later that night, the story came out in a rush of tears and panic. David had not only ended things, he'd blocked her on everything. Apparently, having an affair was exciting, but being with someone who was obviously unstable and creating too much drama wasn't what he'd signed up for. But that wasn't the worst part. "He told people at work," she sobbed into the phone. "He told them about us, about the affair. Everyone knows, Sean. Everyone is looking at me like I'm some kind of cheater? Don't say that word." "Why not? It's what you are." She was quiet for a moment, and I could hear her breathing getting ragged. My boss called me into her office today. She said she was concerned about my judgment and that maybe I should take some time to evaluate my priorities. Translation: her career was in jeopardy. In her industry, reputation mattered. Word traveled fast. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, and I meant it. Not because I wanted her back, but because I didn't enjoy watching anyone suffer, even someone who had caused me months of pain. "Sean, I made a terrible mistake, the worst mistake of my life. I threw away the best thing I ever had for someone who didn't even care about me." "That's probably true. So you'll forgive me? We can try again?" "No." The word came out so simply, so finally that she seemed stunned by it. "What do you mean, no?" "I mean, no. I won't forgive you and we won't try again." But you just said I threw away the best thing I ever had." "You did. But that doesn't mean you get to pick it back up." She was quiet for a long time. When she spoke again, her voice was smaller than I'd ever heard it. "What about everything we built together? 4 years, Sean. 4 years of our lives." "4 years of my life," I corrected. "You were building something else entirely." "That's not fair." "What's not fair is spending 4 years of my life with someone who saw my kindness as weakness and my love as stupidity." I could hear her crying again, but it didn't move me the way it once would have. I'd learned the difference between genuine remorse and self-pity. "I can't afford the house payments without you," she whispered. "That's not my problem anymore. Sean, please, I'm begging you. I have nowhere to go. My sister is already tired of me staying there. My parents are so disappointed they won't even talk to me, and my friends," she trailed off. "Your friends what?" "They're taking sides. Most of them think I'm horrible for what I did. Sarah won't even return my calls." "Good. Sarah had always been too good for Amber anyway." "What about our anniversary trip?" she asked desperately. "The reservations we made, the plans." "I already took care of it, canceled everything, got back what I could." "You canceled our anniversary trip without talking to me?" "There was nothing to talk about. You made your choice months ago." "Sean, you can't just erase 4 years of marriage like they meant nothing." "I'm not erasing them. I'm learning from them." When you stop accepting crumbs, you discover you are worthy of the whole meal. Subscribe if you're ready to never settle again. After we hung up, I sat in my quiet apartment and thought about the man I'd been 8 months ago. The one who measured his worth by how well he could anticipate her needs, who apologized for things he didn't do, who was so afraid of being alone that he accepted being disrespected. That man was gone. And I didn't miss him. The next morning, I did something I'd been planning for weeks. I called my lawyer and had my grandmother's ring, the one I'd given her when we got married, returned to my family. The insurance money from it went into an investment account for the motorcycle I'd bought the week before. When Amber called later that day asking about the ring, I told her the truth. It belongs with my family, not with someone who betrayed them. For the first time in 4 years, I was living a life that was entirely my own choice. And 3 weeks later, when she tried her old tricks on the new guy at her office, the one she thought might be her salvation, he just looked confused. "Why would I pay for your dinner? We barely know each other." That's when she realized not every man was willing to be her personal ATM. Some of us had learned our worth. It's been 6 months since I changed the locks. I'm writing this from the balcony of my new apartment, watching the sunset over the city with a cup of coffee that's exactly the strength I like it. No compromises, no considerations for someone else's preferences. Just coffee the way I want it. The apartment is smaller than the house Amber and I shared, but it's mine. The furniture is what I chose, the art on the walls reflects my taste, and every single item here exists because I wanted it, not because someone else decided I should want it. Last month I got the promotion that came with a 40% raise, and the motorcycle is paid off. I've taken up rock climbing with Derek, started reading books I actually enjoy, and planned a solo trip to Colorado that I would never have been allowed to take before. Cole comes by most weekends. We watch games, order whatever food sounds good, and talk about normal things, work, sports, the future we're building for ourselves. He's never once said, "I told you so," though we both know he could. 3 weeks ago, I ran into Amber at the grocery store. She looked diminished somehow, tired, She was with her sister, who glared at me like I'd personally destroyed her family. Amber herself barely made eye contact. "You look good," she said quietly, while her sister examined cereal boxes with obvious discomfort. "Thanks, so do you." It wasn't entirely true. She looked like someone who'd been carrying stress she wasn't used to handling alone. I'd heard through mutual friends that she'd moved back in with her parents after being unable to afford rent anywhere decent. The irony wasn't lost on me. The woman who'd called me weak was now dependent on her family for basic shelter. "I heard about your promotion. Congratulations." "Thank you." We stood there for a moment in the awkward silence of two people who used to share everything and now had nothing to say to each other. "Sean?" "Don't," I said gently. "We don't need to do this." She nodded, tears starting to form in her eyes. "I just want you to know that I know what I lost." "I know you do." And I did know. I could see it in the way she looked at me, not with the casual dismissal she'd shown for years, but with the desperate recognition of someone who'd thrown away something irreplaceable. But knowing what you've lost and deserving to get it back are two different things. I wished her well and walked away, feeling nothing but a calm satisfaction that I'd become the kind of man who couldn't be manipulated, controlled, or taken for granted. Last Tuesday, I got a text from an unknown number, just 3 words: "I miss you." I knew it was her. Maybe from a new phone, maybe borrowed from a friend. It didn't matter. I read it once, deleted it, and blocked the number. Then I put my phone away and went back to living the life I'd built, the one where I was the prize, not the consolation. I'm not bitter. That's what surprises people when I tell this story. I'm not angry anymore, either. Mostly, I'm grateful. Grateful that I learned who she really was before we got married. Grateful that I found my backbone before it was too late. Grateful that I remembered what it felt like to respect myself. I don't know if I'll get married someday. I don't know if I'll find someone who sees strength in honesty instead of weakness and kindness. But I know I'll never again pretend to be less than I am to make someone else comfortable. And honestly, that's more than enough. The weak man she knew is gone forever. And the man who replaced him doesn't accept crumbs from anyone.